Right, we'll just go on to the next one then. Okay, so the next album comes from the Lasso, Jordan Hamilton and the Saxquatch. It is called Tri Magi, and it was released on the 16th of July this year. It's 13 tracks and approximately 34 minutes long. So this is an album that I discovered through the indie hip hop label Mello Music Group. They're very much a small label, much like Backwoods Studios, who we talked about in our Arm & Hammer Haram review. And they've introduced me to some amazing artists like Open Mike Eagle, Marlowe, Homeboy Sandman, the list goes on. And if you're into hip hop, I definitely recommend subscribing to their mailing list, because you'll find a bunch of cool stuff that you would otherwise perhaps would have missed. So it's obviously made up of these three musicians. Lasso is a musician, engineer, and producer whose music spans from hip hop influenced psychedelia to ethereal phase music, synth out space funk, soul, and hip hop. Jordan Hamilton is a vocalist and cellist who merges musical styles to tell stories of the human experience through a variety of musical genres. His most recent release, Vibrations, has been described as a compilation of feelings in sound with no words. And the Saxsquatch, as you might have guessed, is a saxophonist. He's named Dean Mitchell, and not only is he bent on twisting his instrument into the singular voice of a beast, he's also notable for wearing a Bigfoot costume and playing cover versions of popular songs. At least I think it's the same guy.
Well, that's the thing. I couldn't find that much information about him at all, and whenever I typed in the Saxsquatch into like Google or whatever, it just came up with that guy, like the guy that dresses up as Bigfoot. There can't be very many Saxsquatches.
Yeah, unless there's a guy called the Saxsquatch.
Well, I thought that as well. If you go into because I'm pretty sure I must have read it on the Wikipedia page. There is a Wikipedia page for the Saxsquatch. And I'm pretty sure he did stuff with, like recently, maybe like last year, the year before, did stuff with Hall & Oates. So I'm assuming it's the same guy. You know what I mean? Like, because that's pretty high level. Like, I think he did a cover, or maybe re-recorded one of their biggest hits.
Yeah, like who knows? Like I can't imagine there's like two guys who play the saxophone who have decided to call themselves the Saxsquatch. Maybe there is, but anyway, let's just say they're the same guy, and if they're not, well, I'm sure someone will correct us. But so together, they are the Tri Magi, the three wise men, or the three kings. At least, I mean, that's the name of the album, but I think that's maybe what they're going for there with the Tri Magi name, the fact that there's three of them.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt, man. Like, so you know, when I was doing research for the album, so it's 13 songs, as you quite rightly said, and it's just under 34 minutes long. But I think actually it's like 33 minutes and 33 seconds long. I just wondered if that was kind of deliberate or just a happy coincidence.
It could be. I mean, it could be if it's all the threes, maybe. Yeah. I didn't really pick up on that, but it could well be. I didn't really like the sort of album descriptions and stuff. Didn't really like it. Didn't really explain anything about the album. Or at least I couldn't find anything that really, and I didn't really look up any interviews or anything with the artist to see, to kind of dig into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a sort of weird mixture of I suppose it's like sci-fi synth sounds and like weird spurts of saxophone and like stabbing cello and like just weird danceable beats, and there's bits of drum and bass. There's probably it's a very strange album with lots and lots of different layers, and I think it's fantastic. Like The opening track especially just feels like a work of genius to me. It's got like this really cool tribal beat, like a quite laid back like bass groove, and then you've got the cello just kind of glides over the top of it. It's one of these songs that just makes you want to move your body. There's just these fantastic moments when the saxophone comes in and it becomes like full on cinematic experience. It conjures up these images of like being on a weary journey through the desert on like a camel train or something. It feels like it's straight out of like an adventure film like Indiana Jones or something like that. And it's only just over 2 minutes, but it feels like really epic, which is quite weird because of how short it is. But yeah, really, really great opening to an album.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, like described it as a kind of, well, the opening track at least is a kind of cinematic experience, because when I was doing a wee bit of research for the podcast, I kind of went onto their Bandcamp page, and one commentator on there, by the name of Big Flowers, described the album as a psycho-cinematic journey that traversed every corner of modern jazz. And I think that's a pretty apt description. I think there's actually quite a lot of similarities between some of the stuff on this album, or similarities can be made between some of the stuff that's on this album with the likes of Black Midi and Squid, to be honest.
Yeah.
Some of it feels, like you said, is kind of like part of like a kind of cinematic soundtrack. Some of it, by the same token, kind of feels a bit kind of like Lounge Lizard-esque. Quite smooth and quite slick and kind of schmoozy. However, there's other times, like on Voyager 2, which I think is maybe kind of track number 6 or 7, it feels a bit overwhelming for me, to be honest. It kind of, it took on a bit of a kind of nightmarish feel to it.
Aye, well, the end, especially of Voyager 2, it's like, what was that song on the Squid album where it just descends into total like screaming madness?
Yeah, it's pretty early on. I think I know which one. It's the one that's got female vocals on it. It's like the second or third track. Yeah.
So it's a bit like that. It just descends in absolute chaos of like grunting saxophone and mad electronics, and it's quite Aphex Twin, like in that, like that kind of like chaotic, like maniacal sort of end of like electronic and experimental music. But I think most of that song, like it feels a bit more like LCD Sound System at heart. Like the sort of majority of that song, it's really amped up. It's got like a really urgent beat to it. It's got these kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with Too Many Zoos, but it's got that kind of like danceable like saxophone grunt to it. It's LCD Sound System was the vibe I got from that, up until that kind of last section where it just goes full on like apocalyptic like horror movie. It's just, like you say, it can be difficult to listen to, but it's very, very satisfying, I think.
I did almost turn off. Like, at that point I was like, oh no. But yeah, I stuck with it. I think, again, I'm going to make a similarity between the Squid album. I could see myself enjoying this album, having it on in the kind of background. I can't imagine it's something that I would sit and listen to intently. I don't know if that's something you would agree with or not.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. It's more something that you put on in the background and listen to while you're doing something else, or like I said before, it makes you want to dance. It doesn't make you want to sit and intently listen to it. You want to like be up and doing something. It's got that, even when it feels a bit like it's all over the place, like discordant and with like sort of these layers that are almost at odds with one another. It still makes you want to move and kind of groove to it. Like there's always something there that just drives the songs along. I think that's probably down to a lot of the percussion, which again is one of these albums with just lots of different styles of percussion. I can't even necessarily pick out what many of the instruments are. Like sometimes it just sounds like a block of wood being hit with another block of wood like that. I don't I don't necessarily know what the instruments being used are. In a sort of like Young Fathers kind of the way that Young Fathers use percussion, it's the kind of the saxophone can be really catchy as well, but it can also be really like bizarre and oppressive. And there's bits like in Viagra Boys where the
Yeah, I was waiting to
saxophone
say.
gets unleashed.
It's just like a honking, squealing animal of an instrument, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of just cool shit all over this album and lots of stuff that I really enjoy. I could pick out pretty much any song to talk about on this. I mean, Three Magi Get Paid, really devilish sounding. It's got a really cool bloopy bleepy sort of beat to it. There's a nice this sort of cello strings sort of dance around, and there's like this mad organ section in the middle, and like a really, again, like it's quite a flourishing sort of saxophone solo at the end that becomes more and more like fiendish as it goes along. And then there's like stuff like Played Thrice, which is like it's almost like a stumbling drunk. It's like everything sort of trips over everything else. It feels like it's kind of struggling to get moving. It's like got this weird shuffling, almost like crumpled beat, and like these like crashing, disorienting waves of saxophone, and it all feels like, despite it all feeling like chaotic and like it's about to collapse any moment, it all feels very like well put together and very deliberate.
Oh, I have no doubt that like a lot of this has probably been wasted on me, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I'm sure that kind of technically speaking, in terms of kind of musical prowess and composition and arrangement, it's up there, man. Like, you know what I mean? It'll be on point.
Yeah, like the next track, To Dust. You know when you see on like nature programs, those like time lapses of like plants like withering away and dying. That's what To Dust sounds like. It sounds like the soundtrack to that. It's like so evocative of that. And like there are moments on this that are just proper like dance floor jams, and then there are moments that are just like really evocative and emotional. Like Solar Plateau sounds like it's a journey through like some kind of phenomenon in space. Like there's always something. Each song kind of makes you kind of think of something, or it made me think of like something. Like, you know what I mean? It sort of expressed itself in a very deliberate way. But like I said, I could pick out any song on here and just tell you about why, like what I enjoyed about it, and what I thought was particularly good about it. New Equilidian. It's got this like right at the start. It's just got one piano key, like one piano key. It just gets repeated, and that goes all the way through the song. I just think that's like just really audacious. It's just like everything. There's so much complexity going on here with just of this one piano key that just repeats through the entire song, and it's layered up and covered up in all manner of shit. But like, I just like that idea, and that song reminds me a bit of the like a less bombastic version of the Eels. That's Not Really Funny. You know, the one from the Monkey Dust show. Like
The theme tune.
Yeah, the theme tune for Monkey Dust. It's got that same kind of sort of similar kind of bass sound, and like the style of the saxophone as well. But
I think it's fair to say though, you know what I mean? Like I think you're right, you know what I mean? Like a lot of it does feel like a soundtrack or a visualization of something. You could see it quite easily fitting into, you know, like a visual arts kind of project or something.
yeah, definitely. But I think it works like that, but it also works like as a collection of like just really good like danceable songs. Although I mean they're not all danceable, but at least for the majority of them, they've at least got a sort of bit in it that you could dance to, and I think that's really cool. Yeah, you know, like I said before, well, I mean, it's an album. It sounds amazing. I think it's really ambitious. I keep saying you can dance to it, you can groove to it, you can listen to it when you're doing the dishes, and you can sit and scratch your head at how complex it is. And this is all coming from an album that is like a weird experimental instrumental album. There are like basically no vocals on it at all.
There's just kind of the odd kind of modulated digitalized voice sample thrown in every now and again.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool that an instrumental album can sort of conjure up all these images without needing vocals or a story through lyrics on top of it. It does it without all of that, which I suppose goes right all the way back to what I was saying about the description of Jordan Hamilton's music, about
Totally.
a compilation of feelings in sound with no words, which I think is quite an apt description of what is on this album, really.
Definitely, man. What did you rate it?
I'm sitting on a 9 out of 10, but I'm actually quite tempted to give it a 10 out of 10 because I think this is absolutely fantastic.
You're gonna smash the golden buzzer.
I've been sitting going, like, the more I listen to it, the more and more I'm just like, this is fucking brilliant. And it's not going to be for everyone, but there's just something about it. The way, like, there's a lot of things that sound like they shouldn't work together, and they maybe start off like they don't, and then as the song progresses, they sort of layer up and find, like, lock together. And I think that's just, like, I'm just impressed by what these three guys have kind of pulled together here. And yeah, I think I have to give it a 10 out of 10. So yeah, I'll get the candle the candle out.
Yeah, I mean, I did enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as yourself. I give it like a kind of 7, but maybe I do need to spend a bit more time with it. To be honest, I was actually listening to it just before we started recording, and that might have only been like the third or fourth time that I'd listened to it.
I mean, it helps that it's pretty short.
Oh, aye, yeah, definitely.
I think
as are actually all the albums that we're covering this time round.
They are, and sometimes that can be a bit like, oh, it's over already, but other times that can be
just right.
A big asset, because when an album's too long, it's obvious, and it can be a real slog sometimes to get through an album that's too long, but yeah, I think the length of this is just right.
Cool.
Okay, so that was Tri Magi by The Lasso, Jordan Hamilton and the Saxsquatch.
It's not finished. It's finished.